Welcome to Local Relief Live. This is a show for locals. It's by locals. It's about locals. It's local information. Today we're talking about local weather. So if you are interested in what the heck happens and the science behind a storm, this guy's going to tell you. So welcome to Local Relief Live. Let's talk to Bob Bunting. Welcome to Local Relief Live. Today I am super excited because we have Bob Bunting. Bob Bunting is with the Client Adaptation Center, of which we will tell you all about. But Bob has been a friend, and he is doing some really cool things. And every time I see him, he smiles. He makes everybody happy. But also, you want to know what's going on because he knows things that you don't yet know, but you need to know. So hopefully, we're going to learn some of those things today. So welcome, Bob.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and especially talking about such an important topic as we sort of inch up on the new hurricane season, which we hate to even mention.
That we do. We had a good one last year. Good Lord. But so tell me, before we get into Client Adaptation Center, tell me about your background and all you have done.
Well, I was born a climate scientist, and that's literally true. When I was a little kid, I already knew what I wanted to do when I was 5 years old.
Really?
And I think what was the catalyst actually was a hurricane hitting. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, and a big hurricane hit when I was about 5 years old, and my dad was not home. My mom was, and my mom got us all into the closet and said, you can't go out. And of course, I kept running out of the closet. And standing on the stool in the kitchen and watching the trees go down and what have you. Anyway, it was a severe hurricane and one of the worst ever in New England. And at that moment, I said, wow, that is so cool. I want to know how that happens. So the rest of my life, that's what I've been doing.
It's like Twister, like a different version of Twister, but with a hurricane. So you start as a kid.
They should have named me Twisted. So
I'm going to call you Twisted from now on.
But yeah, so anyway, I went off from there, and when I had the chance to go to college, I went to St. Louis University and received my degrees in atmospheric science and went into the National Weather Service right away and moved quite rapidly up the chain there, and then was hired by one of my classmates in college to go to Boulder to set up the NOAA research centers in Boulder and
that was fascinating.
And design the weather service system that forecasts the weather now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And after that, I became the director of the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research in Boulder. And eventually, with my Florida roots too, because I've been coming to Florida since I was a kid. And of course, hurricanes are a big deal down here, right?
That they are.
So I decided that I wanted to do something really different and create from the ground up a climate adaptation center and use Sarasota as the first one. Because I didn't feel like the public really understood how good climate science is now and how it should be used in every decision that's made about the future. And so we decided to plug climate science into society. And that's what the Climate Adaptation Center does.
So tell me more about that.
So our mission really there is to work with decision makers. And of course, we're all decision makers, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, whether you're a housewife or a father or in your business, in your job, in your community, we're all making decisions all the time. So, we're really all decision makers. But we wanted to get the best climate information from climate science and convert it into that information that decision makers can use on the front end of their decisions, because that's the way we're going to create adaptive strategies to deal with the climate that we already have.
Absolutely.
And the climate has changed. It's changed dramatically since the 1990s.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the infamous term that everyone likes and doesn't like to hear. And you have a spin on it. So most people think, oh, climate change, climate change. Is that real? You call it something different. What is your term?
Well, the climate is changing, and but it's not cooling, it's warming.
Yes.
So climate change to me means it can go up and down,
Oh, true.
but it's not. It's just going up. So climate warming really is a much better term, and words to me mean something.
Yeah.
So I like to use the right words to not overemphasize, but also to get the point through in a way that people can understand it. And so what we're having is unprecedented climate warming, a climate warming that's happening at the rate that's higher than any other time in human history.
I bet that was fascinating.
And
Yeah.
designed the Weather Service system that forecasts the weather now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And after that, I became the director of the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research in Boulder. And eventually, with my Florida roots too, because I've been coming to Florida since I was a kid. And of course, hurricanes are a big deal down here, right?
That they are.
So I decided that I wanted to do something really different and create from the ground up a climate adaptation center, and use Sarasota as the first one, because I didn't feel like the public really understood how good climate science is now and how it should be used in every decision that's made about the future. And so we decided to plug climate science into society. And that's what the Climate Adaptation Center does.
So tell me more about that.
So our mission really there is to work with decision makers. And of course, we're all decision makers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether you're a housewife or a father, or in your business, in your job, in your community, we're all making decisions all the time. So, we're really all decision makers. But we wanted to get the best climate information from climate science and convert it into that information that decision makers can use on the front end of their decisions, because that's the way we're going to create adaptive strategies to deal with the climate that we already have.
Absolutely.
And the climate has changed. It's changed dramatically since the 1990s.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the infamous term that everyone likes and doesn't like to hear. And you have a spin on it. So most people think, oh, climate change, climate change. Is that real? You call it something different. What is your term?
Well, the climate is changing, and but it's not cooling, it's warming.
Yes.
So climate change to me means it can go up and down,
Oh, true.
but it's not. It's just going up. So climate warming really is a much better term, and words to me mean something.
Yeah.
So I like to use the right words to not overemphasize, but also to get the point through in a way that people can understand it. And so what we're having is unprecedented climate warming, a climate warming that's happening at the rate that's higher than any other time in human history. And that's how it works with the greenhouse gases. So we know what's in there now. And so we know that the atmosphere, no matter what we do now, is going to warm for quite a while. And so our only real strategy for the present is adaptation to what is. And that's why we have the Climate Adaptation Center.
So what are your recommendations for adaptation?
Well, there are many, but the first, every adaptation starts with knowing. Knowledge is out there, and our challenge is to bring that knowledge to the community so they understand how it works. They don't have to be a scientist to understand this, but they have to understand in general how it works and why adapting to it is a risk management activity. So, for example, we've had 3 hurricanes last year in 65 days. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented is a good word, but it was just chaos. It was just chaos.
And in April of last year, when we did our national hurricane forecast, which, by the way, is the most accurate hurricane forecast in the world the last 2 years running, we've only missed the total number of hurricanes in the entire Atlantic basin, which is the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of America.
Gulf of America.
By a total of 1 over 2 years.
That's incredible.
We're pretty happy with that.
As you should be.
But we forecast last year was going to be a record Florida season, and we certainly had that. We weren't happy that we were right, but the bottom line is that's the wake-up call, and now we can either move forward doing the same things we always have done that were done in a climate that was a lot different than we have today, or we need to adapt to the fact that sea level has risen 11 inches in Sarasota since 1950, and we're predicting sea level rise of another 9 inches by 2050 for a total of almost 2 feet of sea level rise in 100 years. And the barrier islands, say, are averaging 5 to 6 feet above sea level. And so losing 2 feet of that means that even a modest storm is going to create a lot of flooding, and a major storm is going to create a catastrophe. And so when you think about the future of the barrier islands, you have to think, well, can I afford to take that risk and do the things that will mitigate that risk on the front end and not just hope that it doesn't happen?
So what is your advice for someone that lives on the barrier islands?
Well, usually what happens is, for me, I lived on Longboat Key, beautiful place right at the end of Longboat Key, right on the beach, for a lot of reasons, not just climate, but one of the reasons I decided to leave was because I thought the risk was increasing. And as a person like me, who is knowledgeable, that if I didn't leave, I wouldn't be setting a very good example. So I moved downtown to the highest geographical location in downtown, and that's where I live now.
You moved there before the storms, correct?
5 years ago.
Yes, perfect.
But I think it's okay. I'm not trying to say everybody should leave the Barrier Islands. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the people who are there have to be able to weather the risk, to know whether they should be there or not. They have to know what the risk is and then mitigate that risk. So if I were going to live out there, I would need to be wealthy enough that I could build my house up more than the code suggests, because those codes were made looking back 100 years at climate instead of looking forward 100 years.
I didn't think about that.
And so that's a key thing that our building codes and regulations are following, but they're behind. So if I could give you an analogy, I like driving my car looking out the front window and not out the rearview mirror.
That's good to know.
It really is, especially here. So I think that what we need to be doing is to put that information in our codes, because the people expect that these codes are going to protect them. And because they're so far behind, they are not protecting them. So our system was really geared to deal with a stable climate that we had in the 20th century. And we're still doing the same process, but the climate has changed and we haven't. So adaptation is about things like even making those codes modern and forward-looking rather than backward-looking. And people will say, well, you can't do that. You don't know what the climate's going to be. And what I say is, if you tell me with a 90% chance that you're right, something, I'm going to take that bet every day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, it's a heck of a
People
lot better
go to
than
Las
anything
Vegas
else. Fact.
with a 50-50 chance or less to win, and they're willing to bet there, but they're not willing to bet in their own communities with a 90% chance of winning. I don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I am absolutely with you on there. And even, so most people, again, Sarasota, I've lived here 20 years. And, everyone would say, oh, the infamous ancient Indian burial grounds. Nothing's going to happen in Sarasota. Nothing's going to happen in Sarasota, because the infamous princess, she's not here. Yeah, she was not here this year, at least. But now especially, Sarasota's paying attention. It's you have to. At this point, you have to. When you have a year like we did, and even with Ian, I mean, you pay attention. So what has been the feedback, or what has been the change in when you say what you do? Like, let's say a couple of years ago versus now. What's the perception, or how much more are people paying attention to the words that come out of your mouth?
Well, one of the things is that climate is not political at all. It just reacts to this. It's a system, and the inputs and outputs go into the system, and then the system reacts to those inputs and outputs. So I think the most important thing is something like climate, which is a global impact, has no basis in politics. So, and climate warming should not be a belief, because it's a measurement.
Right.
So if your temperature is 98.3, you can't say, well, it's really not 98.3. It's 88.3.
Yeah.
And that's what you believe. You might believe in God or not.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a belief.
Yeah.
But climate warming is not a belief, it's a fact.
It's a science.
Okay.
Right.
Now, you might not believe it's going to get warmer, but there's a 90% chance that's going to happen. So do you really want to bet your life and your money and your future and your safety on a 10% chance you might be right?
No. I don't.
Okay. It's not the way you build a
Yeah.
society, right?
Yeah.
We have to look at risk. And once we know what the risk is, then we need to adapt to that risk by changing the way we do things to lower that risk. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
I'm an atmospheric scientist, but I'm a risk manager.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here to do, to help this community
100% agree.
lower the risk from something we know is going to happen.
I've been to the events, and we do not sit around and chant or anything like that. It is. I will vouch. It is not a belief. We go through facts and figures and stats and pictures, and it really is based on numbers. It's based on science. So as far as last year's event go, I definitely was hoping you were not accurate with the numbers of storms that we were having. I was really hoping you were wrong, and hopefully Bob's off his rocker, but that was not the case. You're very much on it. So as far as as the events go, and I know we just had an event. I say we, I just attended your event, but tell us about that one, because that one was really cool as well.
Well, thank you. Well, number one is when you talk about these things, I'm probably one of the most optimistic people you've ever met.
Agree.
And I think you know that, right?
Yeah.
So
he's always this happy. Always. Yeah.
I'm a happy, optimistic guy. And, people say, how can you do what you do and be so happy? And it's because I have a belief that knowledge and information in a society like we have will win. And that's what I like to do, is win.
I could say that.
So I feel like what we're doing is talking about it the way it is. And sometimes it's not a happy conversation. But on the other hand, the Climate Champions Awards, which was our last event, is where the Climate Adaptation Center honors those people in our community that have made sustained contributions to climate adaptation. And it's like the Academy Awards of Climate.
It's a good way to put it. Yep.
And it is conducted just like the Academy Awards. There's,
the envelope.
There's the nominations, and there's videos about the nominees. And at the end, the Oscar for climate
Absolutely.
is awarded, which is our Crystal Lighthouse, which is the symbol of the Climate Adaptation Center, because lighthouses are a beacon and they point the way to the future world. And so that's why we chose it.
I love it.
But this year we had 4 nominees, and, we've had 11 total winners now over the years. And, Jennifer Romanecki, for example, the CEO of the Selby Gardens, Botanic Gardens, they just finished a amazing climatization of Selby Gardens that protects it from storm surge and hurricanes. And it was just finished 3 or 4 months before the storms.
Good timing.
Great timing, and there's an example of using modern climate information in your design, building something that's more resilient and protecting the heritage and culture of our community all at once, while generating more revenue for them over time.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
It's not a cost. Adaptation is not a cost, it's an investment. Another example is A.J. Lafley, who won this year. He is the CEO of the Bay Park, a 52-acre redevelopment on Sarasota Bay. And they redeveloped part of the park already and raised a certain section of it, and it acted as a storm surge protection levee for the storm surge that came into Sarasota and Helene and Milton, and protected the Rosemary district from storm surge.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing too, is, people see the Bay project and it's gorgeous. I mean, it is, as far as, being a protective measure, it's the prettiest little protective measure. But people don't realize the science, again, I'm going to use the science, that went behind it, and that there actually was means behind it to protect the area and to protect it, again, like you said, Rosemary District. And it did its job. It absolutely did its job.
And so these are leaders in our community that are using really good climate information to inform their decisions on how these mega investments are being made with impact and with results already. So that's why the climate champions are beacons themselves, and that's why we call it the Beacons Awards,
Absolutely.
And so even though we have threat, we want to balance that by inspiring the community to really understand that doing the right things, using the best climate science information, is in the best interest in the community, and that it will further our way of life and protect our way of life in the future, while the big issue of climate warming gets solved over decades. In the meantime, we have to live a life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now you have another event coming up, which
Right.
I hope, well, depending on the results, I may hope you're wrong. I may hope you're right. Tell me about the one. Of course, it is on April Fool's, but it is not an April Fool's joke. What is the event on April 1st?
Well, we like to have fun, sometimes delivering even bad news. So we decided to have the Hurricane Forecast Day 2025, where the CAC makes its national hurricane forecast. And we hope that we're going to be the most accurate again this year. And so it's on April 1st at the University of South Florida at Selby Auditorium. It's from 8:30 until roughly 11:30. And we'll be talking about last hurricane season, what happened, and the lessons learned. We'll be talking about a new research project that we're involved in with a major reinsurance company, Guy Carpenter Insurance, where we're trying to reinvent insurance so that it can be more specific to, say, a major event like a Category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane, and pay out the premiums without having an adjuster show up to your home or your building or to your community. That if you get hit with a Category 3, you get paid.
Yeah.
As long as that money is used for restoration, you get it. Automatically, no fighting, no nothing. And so we're working on that.
We need to bring that back here and talk about it a little bit more, because that people want to know about, I promise.
Well, maybe we could do that in April, because Guillermo Franco, who is one of my colleagues, Dr. Franco is one of the world's, if not the world's, leading expert in catastrophic risk modeling. And he and I and some other folks are designing this new product that we hope to test right here in the Sarasota area.
No, I've met him. He's brilliant, absolutely. So I'm excited to see it come to fruition. Yeah, I think that's going to be incredible.
So, and then the last piece will be where I give the forecast for the season, the number of hurricanes, the number of major hurricanes, and, what our impacts right here in Sarasota might be.
So I'm going to, before we get into that contact information and how people can register, I want to ask you, what was the big piece, like you talk about things learned from last year. Last year was a doozy. I mean, last year was incredible. What was your number one either shock or lesson learned, or what was your biggest takeaway from this past year?
Well, you alluded to the princess, right?
Yes.
So one thing we have verified is that she left in May last year, and she's not coming back. Okay, so that's one thing. But in all candor, what we learned is that you better know your elevation in advance, and you've got to think about the next time it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens. What is your individual plan for your business, for your community, for your home, and for your family on what you're going to do? In the last 4 or 5 years in Florida, we lost 400,000 automobiles to flooding. A lot of them were just left in garages, even though we knew a hurricane was coming.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go with those cars. A climate adaptation would be when communities and insurance companies get together and say, we need hurricane protection facilities for these expensive cars, and we need evacuation centers where people can take their car and then go to an evacuation center for the 12 hours or 24 hours it's going to be a real issue for them. So we don't have to have catastrophic results every time. But if we're not going to have them, then we're going to have to shift our gear and start spending our money on the front end on prevention, rather just in reacting to these events after they happen. In the United States, in the last 5 years, there have been $700 billion of damage from hurricanes. We're going to run out of money before we run out of hurricanes if we don't start getting smart on preemption, adaptation on the front end, and preparedness. And shifting a small amount of that money to the front end, studies say that for every dollar you spend on the front end, you save $15 on the back end. It's a huge investment. Imagine if I could say to you, Heather, give me $1, and in 5 years I'll give you 15 back. Would you give it to me?
I'd give you more than $1, yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. So, but it's a change of inertia. The society is used to doing things a certain way, and it's resistant to make changes just because change is hard.
Right.
But adaptive changes that pay should rise to the top of our level. And that's why we need a climate screen on our decisions, and we need more people to be looking at this in a semi-strategic manner, because doing something now or 3 months beforehand and getting ready is a lot different than saying, oh my God, something's hitting here tomorrow. What am I going to do? And it used to be fine to do that back in the 1900s, but it isn't now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of, again, the missions of local relief is to have all that information to say, hey, if you do want to prepare, go to local relief, and we'll share you all the information to do that. And I think people are learning more about how to prepare, but also the one big disconnect that I've noticed is that people may know how to prepare, but rarely do people ever know how to recover. And that is such a big difference. That is such a big difference where, you may know how to prepare your home, your dog, your family, but as far as being able to recover after you've lost everything, that's a whole separate baby. That is huge. And that to me, oh my gosh, if there's anything that you ever invest in, it's investing in something that's going to make sure you do not have to recover, because that process is a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. And I don't really wish that on anybody.
Well, I don't either. And, this is climate warming and its impacts is really a mental health problem, because you think of what a family goes through, where I know families that had tree floods in their home in 65 days. They started recovering from one, another one hit. They started recovering from another one hit. And a lot of those families have not recovered.
Yeah.
And the problem is now they're in a position where if they rebuild, the insurance premium will be so high, they can't afford to live if they did rebuild.
Yeah.
So then this can cascade in a bad way. Well, we're going to rebuild the way we had it, which makes them susceptible to having it again. They can't get insurance that they can afford, so they don't buy insurance. And then the next one comes in and they're truly wiped out.
Yeah.
So we need to preempt that chain of thought on the front end and say, if you can afford to take the risk the first time, that's up to you.
Yeah.
But we can't keep digging the hole deeper and expect to get out.
Yeah. Agreed.
So this is where common sense isn't common unless there's knowledge behind it. But once people have the knowledge and information, they generally make the right decision to protect their own future. We're just trying to give them those tools.
Yeah. So if someone wants the tools, and of which you definitely should want them, where do they go for your April Not So Fools event?
Well, if our website is called the Climate Adaptation Center, all one word, .org. And if you then go there, you go to the events page, and it will show all of our events. Like, we have 3 major events a year. The first one is the Climate Champions Awards. The second one is Hurricane Day, which is April Fool's Day, no fooling.
Yeah.
And the third one is going to be November 13th, which is the CAC annual Florida Climate Conference. And this year is going to be on climate and biodiversity. So it's going to be really fascinating about how climate is impacting Florida's biodiversity and what we can do about it. So
now, for those that do not live here or have the privilege of attending in person, can they attend virtually?
Yes.
Good.
So for out of town, for all over the United States and world, by the way, our website is used by, last year we had logins from over 100 countries around the world, because it seems like everybody in the world owns real estate in Florida.
I didn't think about that.
I know. We were
shocked
when we built it. I said,
you.
why are all these people from, all these countries coming here?
Wow.
Well, the information is really easy to understand and is applicable in a lot of places in the world, so that's part of it. But it's the real estate. Florida is really like an international country, because we have so many foreigners who own real estate in Florida and love it. And of course, they're really interested what happens to it. So, so I think the website is one of the great ways of doing it. And we do live stream everything we do, so people can watch in their homes. And we also have it up on our YouTube channel afterward. They can watch the best of kind of thing.
Yeah.
To catch up, but we try to make it easy for people. And but we are a 501c3 organization, and we don't take any government money. Even though some people want to give it to us, we don't want it.
Yeah.
Because the message needs to be clear. It needs to be based on science, and we can't go on swings between people who embrace climate change as a thing and people who don't believe in it.
Yeah.
And all of the, we're not playing tennis.
Right. Right.
Right. So that's why we don't take it. So this is a ground up thing, and it's supported by people like you, and you do.
Yeah.
And people like me, because I do too.
Yeah.
And we have a membership program where people can join, and that money is used in our outreach, so we can do all the outreach that we do. And the more donations we have, the more investment we can make in making that outreach wider and broader and more impactful for people.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I love what you're doing. I go. I absolutely listen to them, and it's in the events. And hopefully after the event on April 1st, maybe we can have you back, and share the information, which would be fantastic to let people know what they're up against this season, because I know people are listening this year, without question.
And I hope to have you back on April 1st.
Yeah, we'll be there April 1st. I will be there April 1st.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic. And yeah, you're hired.
Oh, Bob, thank you. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. This is Local Relief Live. Thank you. If you like the information you heard today, of which I think you do, be sure to like us on social media, follow us, subscribe to us, all of that stuff. But most importantly, download the Local Relief app. That is where you will find anything disaster related. And it's for you. So have a great day, guys. Stay safe.